Hi everyone, my name's Tim. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be talking to you about The Silmarillion by JRR Tolkien and why you should read it and why I think it's brilliant. So, this was published in 1977, um, just after Tolkien's death. It's edited by Christopher Tolkien, his son. Now, I read Lord of the Rings when I was a teenager, after the films had come out. I tried reading it when I was younger and I just couldn't get into it. And then immediately after reading it, I tried to read The Silmarillion because I thought it was Sauron's origin story. And it's not at all. It's something different. It's something more than that. It's really hard to describe what this is about because it's not one story. This isn't about Sauron's origins. It's not a prequel. It's an anthology of stories, sometimes told in chronological order, mainly about elves, but there are men. There's the Silmarils, where the names come from, which are these three magic, beautiful gems. But it's also not really about that. There's all different stories. So there are 24 different chapters in the Quenta Silmarillion, and the Quenta Silmarillion is one of, I think, 5 different books in this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, five different books. So there's 5 different kind of volumes in here, and the main one, the biggest one, is the Quenta Silmarillion. That has 24 different chapters, and each chapter is its own story. So that sounds very confusing, and it is. There is a lot of proper noun bingo. So here we go. I've just opened up right at the start. Yet it is among the Eldar that the Valar endeavoured ever, and despite of Melkor, to rule the earth and to prepare it for the coming of the firstborn, and they built lands, and Melkor destroyed them. Valleys that delved, and Melkor raised them up. Mountains they carved, and Melkor threw them down. Seas they hollowed, and Melkor spilled them. And naught might have peace or come to lasting growth, but as sure as the Valar began to labour, so would Melkor undo it or corrupt it. That was one sentence, and every time I went, that's because it's a proper noun. So there's a lot of proper noun bingo in this, and some parts are heavier than others. This book has very little dialogue in it. I think I got 150 pages in before I got to a piece of dialogue, and it kind of threw me a bit. But that's not what this is about. This isn't a novel. This is the myths of Middle Earth. It's almost like a religious text in a strange way. I felt very spiritual when reading it because of the prose. Yeah. Yeah, because the prose is just so beautiful and layered and long and languid and flowing like a river. That I read this, and it takes you a while to read this. It took me a long time to read this because you can't. It's not a page turner. That's not what it's about. You can't blitz this, and it isn't perfect. I don't necessarily recommend this to people, but I really, really enjoyed this. The closest thing there's ever like it that's been written is Fire and Blood by George R.R. Martin, which is a fictional history of Westeros and the Targaryens. They are similar if you look at it from a purely objective viewpoint. They're about histories, they're about retellings of old stories, but they're chalk and cheese. They're so different. Fire and Blood is about facts and tracing through the historical records and not being able to know what someone was thinking. while this is about myth, this is much more emotional. It's the prose is just so beautiful, and just so, you know. I just picked up a random thing. There Beren buried his father's bones and raised a cairn of boulders above him and swore upon it an oath of vengeance. Just, ooh, emotions heightened, and it's tragic. That's one thing, actually, is so much of this is tragic. It's about the fall of elves and men. It's about the rise of evil, and you have these elves and these gods of creating this world in the first age of Middle Earth, and it's about it all falling apart due to greed and infighting and evil. And it's very tragic, this book. This book is about endings. This book's about the falling of great empires. And evil wins a lot in this. Yeah, it was just brilliant. It was just brilliant. It took me a long time to read it, and I'm still thinking about it. There's some there's books that have spun out of this, like The Fall of Numenor and the Fall of Gondolin, which I think has become one, and the Children of Hurin. You can see, and then the final one is of Beren and Luthien. Now that's a love story for the ages, and I think JRR Tolkien even had Beren and Luthien put on him and his wife's tombstones, and you could see why those were then. Tolkien then wrote more about them, and they spread out into their own full books, because here they're covered in like 20 pages, and they could be their own novel. In fact, almost all of the chapters in here are 20, 30 pages, and some, or even less. And they could be their own novel, because they're just so rich, and the stories are so emotional, and they go through ups and downs and tragedies. And you also see how elves and dwarves and men relate differently. They consider time differently. They consider grudges differently. You could take anything from this, and make a tremendous story out of it, because these are tremendous stories. Which is the ultimate irony of the Rings of Power TV show, because Amazon didn't have the rights to this. But yeah, I love this, and reading this, I immediately want to read Lord of the Rings again. And no one can do it like Tolkien. No one can do it like Tolkien. So it's 5 stars from me. And I would, if you like Lord of the Rings, I would pick this up, but you can't read it like a novel. You can't blitz through it. You just have to let it soak in your brain as you're reading it. But no, I absolutely loved this. I loved it. And yeah, that's it. Now get out of my house!